Alright lads, welcome back to another of my War Thunder vehicle reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Harrier GR.7. This is the newest strike fighter added to the British tech tree. It's a rank 7, battle rating 11.0 naval and strike aircraft, obviously in the British tech tree. To unlock this jet, you're going to have to grind out 390,000 research points before purchasing it for the cost of 1,060,000 silver lions. To put this vehicle in your lineup, it will also cost you 300,000 silver lions, and for the expert and ace qualifications, it's 1,060,000 silver lions and 3,000 golden eagles respectively. The GR7 was a modernised variant of the old Harrier platform. It has bigger wings, giving it better low speed performance, and a slightly more powerful engine, as well as lots of new goodies to play with on the battlefield. But with a huge increase in battle rating up to 11.0, compared to its other tech tree counterpart, the Harrier GR3, a battle rating 9.7, is the GR7 worth it? Or have Gaijin done something unthinkable and actually overbalance an aircraft when introducing it, rather than underbalancing it? Shocking, I know. Anyway lads, if you want to know just how good this plane is, stick around for the rest of the video. Alright lads, welcome back. Jumping straight into it, the GR7 is powered by the Rolls-Royce Pegasus Mark 105. The GR3, the other tech tree variant, uses the Mark 103. The Mark 105 engine basically gives you slightly more thrust. However, it isn't really noticeable, and you certainly aren't a wonder weapon. The thrust and acceleration of the GR7 isn't really anything to write home about. While the initial takeoff does seem very fast, in my opinion the GR7 doesn't really accelerate that well, particularly at lower speeds, and especially at the battle rating of 11.0, where most of the other jets will be afterburning, your acceleration is pretty much below par in my opinion. The top speed of this jet is also rather limited, at least compared to the other vehicles that you'll be fighting against, but with your increased wing size, you do have pretty good slow speed performance. There's a little bit of a razor though, because you don't really want to be getting slow in the first place in top tier jets. It's a great way to get a missile shot up your ass. But the decent turn rate and the frankly infinite floors you have in this thing, I think you can take 700 if I'm not mistaken. You can you have quite a high level of survivability, at least in a one-on-one fight. One major downside I would say though, because you aren't like a Kafir or a very fast jet, you can't really dodge incoming AIM-7Fs or dogfight missiles. There's a way to evade them. If you're in a fast jet, you can like roll really quick, you can dodge it. You can't do anything like that in a GR7. If you're going in a head-on and a F-14 shoots a AIM-7 at you, you're pretty much going straight back to the hangar. Because of this, I see the GR7 as more just like a kill stealer. You can make some plays by yourself against enemies that are a little bit unaware of your presence. You do have very good missiles, as we'll see shortly. But you're kind of like a scav in Tarkov, just hiding in a corner and shooting anyone that... it's like exit camping basically. I guess, not really, but... You kind of have to be a little bit of a scavenger, that's what I'm trying to say. You can't carry in this jet, it doesn't have the top speed or the manoeuvrability. While it is workable in a one-on-one fight, you can force people to overshoot pretty quickly. If you get ganged up on by 2 or more opponents, then there's nothing you can really do. You bleed speed very quickly, your engines aren't powerful enough to accelerate you back up, in my opinion. So yeah, if you get teamed up on, you're pretty much going straight back to the hangar. But what about the weapons of this aircraft? Well, I think I should start by mentioning that the Harrier does not have any radar at all, so naturally you don't have any radar guided missiles, which arguably is a large part of the meta at top tier now. But if we take a quick look at our pilot, we can see that we do have a CCIP for our cannons, rockets and bombs. We also have night vision, as well as an optional FLIR pod, or forward looking infrared, basically thermal imaging. These are used for guiding the JDAMs onto target. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Technically speaking, the stock weapons and primary weapons of the GR7 are the 25mm Aiden cannons. Each gun holds 100 rounds of ammunition, which is pretty small to be honest, and they have an insane fire rate of 1,850 rounds per minute. This gives you barely any time on trigger, so you will need some real trigger discipline to be effective with these weapons. Luckily for you however, The cannons absolutely hit like a train, even more so than the old 30mm, and these things actually have high muzzle velocity, which makes them both hard hitting and easy to aim. But it gets better. If we take the ground target belts, we have two types of ammunition, a HVAC tracer and an armor piercing high explosive. These rounds have a muzzle velocity of 1100 meters per second, meaning that these rounds have a higher muzzle velocity than an armor piercing round coming out of a Tiger II's 88mm gun. Again, this just makes it incredibly easy to aim. It's basically a point and click adventure. On top of this, the HVAC belts have very high penetration. At 500 meters, you can penetrate 80mm of a tank's armor. This means in ground realistic, you can attack the tanks of the enemy team pretty effectively, and if you get bored playing an air realistic battle, you can shoot up some medium tanks for some free XP and silver lions. But enough about the cannons, what about the actual primary weapons of this vehicle? Our first set of rockets are the SNEB TAC-23s. These travel pretty quick at 651 meters per second and penetrate 400mm of armor. We also have the 70mm CRV-7s, the same rockets found on the Apache series of helicopter. These travel much faster at 1034 meters per second, but has less penetration, only being able to penetrate 290mm of armor. But although they have less penetration, they have a much higher TNT warhead, with 1.19 kilos, compared to the 400 grams in the SNEBs. We then have two different types of bombs. These are dumb bombs, mind you. First is the 500 pounders, which will destroy any vehicle within a radius of 7 meters, and we also have the 1000 pounders, which will destroy any vehicle within a radius of 12 meters. We then come on to the JDAMs. The JDAMs have to be used with the flare pod, or the targeting pod. This means that you will not be able to take along your cannons if you choose to take out these weapons. But up first, we have the GBU-12 paveway. This has a TNT warhead of 120 kilos, which is pretty effective, mind you. The step up from that is the Mark 13s. These have a TNT warhead containing 288 kilos of TNT. And finally, we have the GBU-24, or the Paveway 3. This is basically a 2000 pounder containing 505 kilos of TNT filler. While in theory the GBUs do give you pinpoint precision, and be honest, they are pretty cool, but you will have to maintain a laser lock on the target until impact, which makes your flight path incredibly predictable and makes you a sitting duck for enemy air cover. And to be frankly honest, the Harrier is best played low and fast, climbing to a high altitude looking for a target and then waiting until the bomb impacts. It's just not in the meta at the minute, boys. You want to be low, coming in fast, make an attack run and then getting out of there. So while the GBUs are pretty cool and you can roleplay like you're taking part in the invasion of Iraq, they aren't really that useful in game in my opinion. We can then also carry the AGM-65Ds. These are the same air-to-ground missiles as found on the A-10 late. These missiles are notable for having a thermal imager in the missile itself, however the optical zoom is pretty atrocious. You can't really lock onto a target at long range, so again, you'll have to get very close to an enemy target before you can actually get a lock, which in turn makes you incredibly vulnerable to the missile anti-aircraft systems at top tier. The missiles themselves have a single stage high explosive anti-tank warhead containing 51.2 kilos of TNT. This gives the missile over 800mm of penetration, but once you launch the missile, you have no ability to guide it or correct its flight path. Like the JDAMs, in theory they are pretty cool to use, but they aren't that effective in game. You can't really guide them in, and you have to get suicidally close to even get a lock really. And finally, for our air-to-air missiles, we can carry the legendary AIM-9L, first used by the British in the Argentinian conflict, or the Falklands War. Rather unique to War Thunder, the GR.7 can carry a combination of an AIM-9L and a countermeasure pod. These countermeasures are located just above the rail of the missile, giving you a frankly insane amount of flares in total. I believe it's 700 you can theoretically carry between 4 missile pods and the aircraft's own dispensers. While this flare amount is impressive, it's not as impressive as the AIM-9L. They have an all aspect lock range of 3 kilometers and 30 Gs of maximum overload, making them arguably the second best missile in the game after the French Magic 2. So that's all the overview, lads. Let's get into the key questions. Does the GR7 have a good lineup? Well, top tier Britain isn't exactly the meta at the minute. Its main battle tanks are quite slow, albeit pretty well armoured in certain areas. The gun breach is the size of Texas, at least for the Challenger 2s, so it certainly isn't the most competitive tech tree currently in War Thunder. Because of this, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Is the Harrier new player friendly? Well, absolutely not. It's a subsonic, slow accelerating, basically cash jet at top tier, going against opponents which are very, very supersonic. It also lacks semi-active radar homing missiles, which, as I've said, is kind of the meta now at top tier after the latest update. So for new player friendly, I give it a 1 out of 5. Is it good value for money or value for grind? Well, again, it's not really. I don't see why you'd use this over the British Phantoms, to be honest. Sure, it's got AIM-9Ls, but when you're against opponents that can just simply run away from you or fire a AIM-7 at you and completely negate you, I don't really see the point, really. You could say, well, this has been added to buff the top tier British lineup for ground attack, but again, it's not a good ground attacker, it's slow. Anyway, I'd give this a 2 out of 5. It's cool, but I wouldn't recommend people going out and grinding this thing. You aren't exactly missing out. Is this playing meta? Again, I can't give it a good high score. I don't see why it's such a high battle rating at 11.0. The American A10A late also has 4 all-aspect missiles, the same AIM-9Ls. The A10 also has a similar ability in ground attack. It's got the same Maverick missiles. It doesn't have JDAMs, but it's pretty much all the same features. And that's only battle rating 9.7. So why is this thing battle rating 11.0? To be honest, I have no idea. It seemed like Gaijin have gone a bit hog wild with the battle rating button. In ground realistic battles, you also have a pretty ridiculously high spawn point cost. Why try and get 750 spawn points to spawn in the Harrier when I can just spawn in the Apache for much cheaper, with 16 Hellfire 2 missiles, which are arguably much more effective than anything this plane can carry. Again, I'm quite baffled as to why it's 11.0. Maybe I'm just a shitty pilot, that's probably true, but for the meta rating, I'm gonna have to give it a 2 out of 5. While in ground realistic, you can use it for CAS, I suppose, but I don't see why you'd use this over a helicopter. And in air realistic battles, the rating will probably be 1 out of 5. It can't really run away from anything. Sure, it's got 4 good missiles, but everything has flares now which can counter it pretty well. Like I say, you kind of just are a scavenger. You're like General Sam hiding in a corner just waiting for people to walk by with the pants down. But again, maybe I'm just shit. And finally, the coolness rating. Well, you all know this is coming. I'm British after all and incredibly biased, but 5 out of 5. It just looks great. While I'd never use them in a battle, the JDAMs do look cool as hell. And there's just something about having 4 hard points per wing just which makes it look badass. I love it. Anyway lads, I think the GR.7 is a nice addition to War Thunder. Although I wouldn't recommend people going out and grinding it. I think it's over tiered at the minute. I don't really see a point of playing it when you can play the Mirage at the same battle rating, which is supersonic, has better missiles. Granted, it's not as good at ground attack, but there's no better ground attacker at top tier than helicopters, so I don't really know what the point of it is. But I'm saying it just looks cool. It doesn't play well, but I like having it in the game. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. It's not really that good, but it looks cool. Anyway lads, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. And be sure to let me know down in the comment section what you guys would like to see reviewed next. Finally, if you loved the video, consider becoming a channel member, like Wolfyfly, Joseph Metcalf, Tomster013, Just Someone, Dr. Bob, Doboa LX, Tans, William Tessier, and Lola Alfonsi. Thank you very much for becoming members lads, and I'll see you in the next review.